The United Nations on Monday warned that the amount of heat trapped by the Earth reached record levels in 2025, with the consequences of such warming feared to last for thousands of years. The 11 hottest years ever recorded were all between 2015 and 2025. The World Meteorological Organization's State of the Global Climate 2025 report confirmed. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says the global climate is in a state of emergency, with planet Earth being pushed beyond its limits. And for more on this, I can welcome Claire Ransom, who is the coordinator of the report. She's also an assistant scientific officer at the Climate Monitoring and Policy Division at the World Meteorological Organization. Good morning, Claire, and thank you very much for joining us. The report you helped put out has some alarming findings in it, some of which, such as the 11 hottest years all happening over the past decade, been quite familiar to people who watch the news. But there are other elements that are new. How would you describe the findings?
Thanks so much. Glad to be here. And unfortunately, I wish it were with better news. But our findings this year are old news in some ways and new in others, in that the climate is still continuing to change. The Earth is continuing to warm. This is something we're all very familiar with. But this year, we've added a new element, which is called Earth energy imbalance. And that's really an indicator that's looking at kind of bridging the story to help us understand why the planet is warming and where that energy is going. So we all have heard of greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, they are continuing to rise at record levels. We saw the jump from 2023 to 2024 was actually the largest on record. So we're headed the wrong way. But we are now, for the very first time, measuring in our report the ways in which those greenhouse gases are trapping the energy in the Earth system and warming not only our lands, but very critically our oceans. Oceans absorb about 90% of that energy, and they are warming at record levels, doubling compared to when the initial observations first began, which is contributing to sea level rise. We're also seeing warming in our frozen world, in the cryosphere, in our glaciers and sea ice and the ice caps. So tremendous impacts for people on ground already, and we'll just continue to see this for hundreds, if not thousands of years to come.
Now, the report mentions global energy imbalance for the first time. Is there anything in particular that has accelerated this change in recent years?
We're seeing all of these changes are driven by increasing greenhouse gas concentration. Those are really the driver of this energy imbalance, and we've known that from the get-go. And so as we're seeing greenhouse gas concentrations continue at record levels, we will continue to see this Earth energy imbalance continue, if not accelerate, which will then also have cascading impacts on the acceleration and the worsening of all of the other indicators, particularly for the oceans and our warming on land, which is going to have tremendous impacts on things like tropical cyclones, marine heat waves. We'll see tremendous impacts on coral reefs, marine ecosystems, fisheries, etc.
Now, we've already seen in recent years the real-time effects that global warming has, particularly in extreme weather events. How is it likely to affect human populations? Are richer and poorer countries going to be equally affected, or will certain regions be worse off than others?
Yeah, so first, climate impacts are already being felt in every region of the world, in both high and low-income countries, but they are already not being experienced equally, and that will just continue to happen as time goes on. What we're really seeing very clearly is that exposure and vulnerability play a very big role. So we look at a number of different extremes in the report, things like tropical cyclones, droughts, floods, etc. And in contexts where communities are already facing challenges, things like limited resources or conflicts, that vulnerability is very much amplified, and climate shocks can have much more severe and lasting consequences than when we're in richer nations or in countries where resources are more readily available. And we're really seeing that it's not just single events, but really compounding shocks where things like floods or droughts are happening once over and over again, and really reducing the ability of communities to prepare, to recover, and to adapt to those events. That's where we're really seeing the big discrepancy.
Now, the current war in the Persian Gulf has more or less, not exactly brought to a standstill, but certainly stopped or reduced the flow of oil, which is, of course, one of the big drivers of climate change itself. What do you think that the long-standing impacts of this war, long after it is finished, might be for climate change?
So unfortunately, it's true that the world is facing multiple and overlapping crises, but the thing about climate change is that it doesn't pause. It's going to keep going regardless of the global context that we're in, and it will continue to unfold alongside these crises. So in many cases, it's going to continue to amplify the risks that we'll see from multiple conflicts that are going on around the world. But we here at WMO are here to continue to monitor the climate and to continue to try to draw his attention to it as much as we can in a world full of competing priorities and other conflicts. And it's very much our hope that we can bring climate action as a part of addressing these broader conflicts and challenges rather than having to compete for the attention.
Now, you mentioned there competing conflicts and interests, and we've seen in quite a lot of countries, particularly in the developed world, where there have been moves to roll back into environmental protections. Is there a real danger that there will be like a slipback on this across the world?
It's hard to say. We are seeing that there is less climate action in some countries, and that there are definitely some lessening of the enthusiasm in the climate world as other priorities are taking place. But we are also seeing climate action step up in others, and that gets maybe less attention. So it's really a balance, and we are hopeful that as these impacts are unfortunately continuing to take place and the information is becoming more readily available, there'll be an uptick again, and we'll see that the climate action really get to where it needs to be globally.
And finally, can I just ask you, are we at a climate turning point? And if so, is there any room for optimism at any point? Are there any silver linings?
Yeah, so we are it's not too far gone. I think that's really important for all of the viewers here today to really hear that it's not too late, and that every degree of warming really does matter. So the actions that we take today will have a tremendous impact on the extent to which we feel the impacts of tomorrow. It is true that we have already committed in some areas to impacts that will be irreversible on human timescales. Ocean warming will continue at this rate now for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But that's not reason to give up hope. There are many other areas of the climate and of the planet that can still be changed, and very much still do need our work and our actions from everybody. And every single action that we're able to take in every increment that we're able to reduce warming will have a tremendous effect, not only on our generations, but future generations as well.
Thank you very much for that, Claire Ransom, the coordinator of the World Meteorological Organization State of the Global Climate 2025 report.